Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks to the members of the public for joining us today. As both of you have been here before, so you kind of know the drill, but I'll hand it over to Commissioner Friedman, who's serving as our interim chair today, kind of fulfilling part of his vice chair duties, his newly elected vice chair duties, but we can discuss that in more detail shortly. But Commissioner Friedman, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks like we'll be quorate. So would you like to, we'll call the meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. And LP, if you could do the roll call, please.
And Commissioner Barrett.
Present.
Commissioner Baker. Not currently present. Commissioner Friedman.
Yes, present.
And Commissioner Torrance.
Present.
Okay, and that's our roll call.
Okay, all right. And the agenda was emailed to the commissioners last week in accordance with relevant Brown Act requirements. Would there be any comments on the agenda? Otherwise, we can move to accept the agenda.
I had one question, which is what is AB 2944? Is that going to be explained at that point?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the open meetings Brown. It is a Brown Act question, and LP will go on to it. So a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay.
Next time I will put the specific description of what the law is.
Thank you very much.
In the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we don't have, there's Commissioner Baker. So let's pause for a second to record him, and then we can move forward.
Hi, Commissioner Baker. We're just pausing so we can record you on our roll call.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I think we've got Commissioner Baker on board. We've accepted the agenda. Welcome and introductions. No presentations or additional staff. So this would now be the time for public comments. This is the time for members of the public to address the Sustainability Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter of the Commission. The Commission values your comments, but pursuant to the Brown Act, cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes are assigned to each speaker. And we have public comment. Paul, any public comment for us this evening?
Yes, thank you. Paul Henriksen, Palm Springs, Upper West Side. And I'd like to address the commission, thank you, regarding the city's turf conversion rebate matching program. And 2 points in particular, looking forward to seeing the sustainability draft or craft a proposal to City Council for additional funding. And also a second point that the Commission and the City Council consider either removing or raising the matching cap, which is currently at 5,000. The reason behind that is it's strongly discouraging HOAs from moving forward with turf conversion. I'm already aware of several who are holding back, hoping to see some the removal or the raise of the cap, as well as additional funding, because the current cap would mean that if they need to use matching grants, they're at about 1,600 square feet. And for HOAs, that's a very small percentage typically of the turf that they're looking to convert. And so that's a really important factor. So they're holding off at this time. And we'd like to see them do that, because the ultimate goal, the primary goal, is convert as much turf to types of low to zero use water landscaping as possible. And HOAs can really help bring that about, and to convert as much, and secondarily to convert as much space to attractive landscape spaces that do not resemble dirt or dirt yards or lots. So they don't want to see DG, which is a good thing. So we don't want to just convert to dirt. We want to see it landscaped in some fashion. So tomorrow morning, I'm also going to be on the Desert Water Agency's meeting and asking them to also take some considerations that'll help encourage HOAs to participate, because right now they won't. And that's everything. Thank you very much. Sorry, I forgot to change my name from Go Bananas to Paul Henriksen. Fortunately, you know me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll record you in the minutes as Paul Henriksen. Okay, and Prima Walker, would you like to make a public comment? And welcome to the Sustainability Commission meeting.
Oh, thank you, David Friedman. I've been on and off on the sustainability meetings and following them on the YouTube. Following with the other person, I just wanted to add, like, to know what is the reason behind Palm Springs City giving the matching dollars, and because the major thing the Desert Water Agency implemented grass removal program is towards water conservation and turn the turf and the grasslands into like some sustainable way where we can conserve water or use less water. As soon as I found the program, I did it because I'm getting some financial support, and I did it in a way where I'm trying to conserve more water. Rather than putting in the DG, I just added like thick layer of mulch in my front yard, my backyard, and I'm doing the same thing with the front yard. So I think Sustainability Commission just need to consider how we can help the community to change their landscape. Yes, they're removing the turf and the grass, and rather than just saying anything desert related is fine, we can kind of point the community towards saying, hey, this is a way, if you are landscaping it with wildflowers, native flowers and everything, you can just cover the ground with mulch or wood chips that will add some color to your ad, and at the same time conserve more water. Or when it rains, rather than the water just washing off from the surface layer, that mulch is helping to prevent the water to run off and seeping it into our groundwater levels. That's the first point. And the second point is just a question from my side saying that we are matching the dollars for the people who want to do it right now. Last year, it was only $2 per square feet, or a couple of years ago, last year. And now the price went up to all the way from $3 from Desert Water Agency plus $3 from Palm Springs City. So which is a total of $6 at this point. But when the program started, most of the people got only $2 per square foot. Are we anyway addressing that gap, that $4 gap? I mean, I'm pretty sure like people who did the grass remover program are very mindful about like water conservation and how can they be much more saving water and everything. But it seems at this point, it's $6 per square feet. Are we trying to everybody to convert their lawns into water conserving yards, or what is the point behind that $4 gap? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I think those are all the members of the public that are logged in. So at this point, we can close public comment. Thank you to both of you for your comments. This is an agenda item, so we will be discussing it under old business. So you'll hear the thoughts from the commissioners. Okay, and over to you, LP, for staff comments.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to keep everything, I have some things in old business and some things here. So I'm going to do my best to stay on topic. Thanks to everyone for attending today. Most of my staff comments today are going to be about kind of the proceedings around adding new members to the commission and kind of those processes, basically what we've learned from the clerk's office. And then also wanted to take a minute to reflect on the November climate action presentation to the city council, which was 3 weeks ago and it feels like a year ago. So I had to pull back up my notes because I was like, what happened at that? Did I do that? Was that me? So basically to start off, so as you all know, our new city council was sworn in on Thursday of last week, which is great. New mayor sworn in, et cetera. Everybody's kind of moving and shaking. And so our understanding is that the council is going to be looking to make new commissioner appointments at the end of January. So we will be able to kind of get back up to our standardized size of 5 commissioners at that time. And so based on talking with our deputy city manager in the clerk's office, they've actually recommended, since it doesn't seem as though we have any items that will require commission action in January, that we perhaps skip the January meeting and reconvene in February with perhaps a more full complement of commissioners. So that's something that we can discuss among the group, especially when we talk about the virtual versus in-person options. But that was the recommendation we received internally, is to kind of do this meeting, get through our business, skip January, come back in February with kind of the full crew. So that's sort of the latest on that front. And happy to answer any questions about that or get into any details, or if any other commissioners think there's something I might have missed or something I can clarify, happy to do that. The second, so the climate presentation to the City Council went really well, I thought. So thanks to all of you for your really helpful feedback when we presented this, or when we walked through the draft presentation in our last commission meeting. Really helped to tighten up, I think, the story, kind of give good context and figure out how to best highlight the work that we want to do next year in particular. So very grateful for that. I think it got us to a really good place. And so I appreciate all of your support. We did have a sort of contextual, interesting presentation, which is that we were surrounded by very detailed items. And so I think we were perhaps the beneficiaries of people having been really, really detailed, involved in certain updates to legislative code that didn't really have very much to do with sustainability, that perhaps took away some of the detail that they might have otherwise turned to this presentation. So everything was very on topic, I guess that's the short way to say that. We did get some interesting comments around how we're going to be continuing to work with other city departments. There was a desire for also more data and like reporting on different kinds of things. So I'm kind of thinking about, and this is something that maybe I can bring like some ideas to our next meeting, potentially in February, around like a dashboard for certain kinds of data. I mean, I hate creating dashboards that then just are static, but there's interest in knowing things like how many EVs are registered in Palm Springs, like how many megawatts of solar are generated within the Coachella Valley, like, those kind of more bread and butter sustainability numbers, many of which are knowable, some of which are not easily knowable, but many of which are. So we got some interest in kind of showing our progress in different ways. We got also some interest in kind of like multi-stakeholder work, so particularly around transportation. So Mayor Garner mentioned interest in standing up some sort of like city public collaboration around transportation, which I know Commissioner Torrens, maybe you and I should touch base on that, because I think that dovetails nicely with the work that you've been thinking about with mobility kind of outreach. They were happy to hear our focus on data and gathering information before we do new things. So that was good, as opposed to kind of just like, you should do this tomorrow. So that was very helpful. And I think they're kind of just in a position where they're looking forward to supporting our continued work. We did the one area of confusion, was, by when are we supposed to have reached carbon neutrality and according to whom? So that's something that we'll have to kind of verify a little bit, what was the final commitment in terms of carbon neutrality by 2030 versus the state's goals and that kind of thing, and just figuring out, making sure our strategies and things are on point for that. But that's pretty much all I have on those items, but happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information.
Any comments from the commissioners on the staff report? I do have one comment, but let the other commissioners speak first. Yes, Commissioner Barrett, if your hand was raised.
And I was muted. I do know of at least 2 people who are interested in becoming commissioners. I'm not sure if they've applied. Should I go ahead and encourage them to apply?
I would say if there is anyone who you know of who is interested in being a commissioner, they should definitely, the window I believe is still open for that, because I don't believe they've started reviewing applications. So I would encourage them to go ahead and get applications in. The last I heard, we had, Anita, was it 3? Did Monique tell us how many applications we had? I know it was at least 3.
I don't recall, but 3 sounds right.
Yeah, so we do have some people in the pipeline. But yes, definitely, if you all know anybody who is interested in joining the commission, they do have time to still fill out those applications.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Baker, Commissioner Torrens, any comments on the staff report?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. I would just add LP as a follow-up, because it was brought up at your council presentation, that I'll be in touch with you at the beginning of the year so we can move forward on the various code proposals. I think the one we could probably move forward a little quicker would be the cannabis proposal. So let's touch base at the beginning of the year on that. On the other matter, as I mentioned, we're still waiting for the updated cost effectiveness report. I'll deal with the solar issue in green building solar, but that will have an effect on some of the numbers. But let's move forward at least on the cannabis and trying to do a workshop on that for stakeholders, because we will want to get stakeholder comment on that.
Yep, definitely. I prepped planning last week when we spoke at the end of the week, so they're ready as well.
Okay, great. All right, that's fine. Okay. All right, I think we can finish up on staff comments then and move to approval of the minutes. So there are 3 separate minutes for the last 3 meetings. We can take care of them all at the same time unless anyone has any specific comments on any of the minutes. And thank you, Anita, for bringing us up to speed on those. And thank you also for integrating a couple of comments that I made on those. So I'll entertain, if we can do them all together, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 20th, October 18th, and November 15th, all regular meetings of the commission. So would someone like to make a motion on to that effect?
Second.
Okay. Was there a motion first?
Was that a motion or?
Yeah, I'll take a motion first and then a second. Did we get a motion?
So moved. So moved.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, fine. All right. All in favor of approving 3 minutes, September 20th, October 18th, and November 15th?
Aye.
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 All right, so they are unanimously approved. All right, LP, you want to deal with the other issue, and then I'll speak after that. Next issue on the agenda.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So as you all received, so we, you'll see in the old business, we will be accepting the resignation of Commissioner Randy Evans, who was our freshly elected chair of our commission. So I think thanks to some fast-moving developments that sound very exciting in his world, he is now no longer a Palm Springs resident, which makes him categorically ineligible to be our chair. And so we are in a bit of a pickle. As David mentioned when we spoke about this earlier today, we're in uncharted waters. And so we basically are in a situation where, because we will have the new commissioner appointments coming in January, we'll have kind of like a different, we'll have to do this effectively again in February, because our dear Commissioner Friedman will probably be termed out at that point, and will no longer be able to serve as our fearless leader. However, in the interim, he can still do that in an interim role. However, we would then need an interim vice chair should, for instance, Commissioner Friedman be pulled to some very important CPUC proceeding or for some reason otherwise be unable to join us at an important opportunity. So so we need to do elections again, and basically kind of for this almost like caretaker period, I guess, before we sort of revisit either in February or in March. You know, if we decide we don't want to do that, you know, the first day that we have a bunch of new people, you know, we can kind of cross that bridge when we get to it, assuming that the appointments happen on time in January. But so we do need to do an election again. So that's the context. Commissioner Friedman was, or sorry, Chair Friedman, was there anything I left out?
That's it. I think, but this is all up to you. I'd be willing to serve as chair, but once again, for the very short interim period, and it's mostly to assist LP in kind of the administrative reviewing minutes, helping to set the agenda, et cetera, for so long as I'm still on the commission, with the understanding that my time will at some point, the meter will at some point, probably in the next month or two, run out. But in the meantime, subject to your approval, we'd be willing to serve as chair for that interim period. But as LP mentioned, we really should have a vice chair who's on board for if I get pulled out, which probably may not happen because I'm pretty good at managing my time, but more importantly, if I am thrown out because there is a new commission, so that there is somebody who could once again do exactly what I'm doing right now, which is serving as interim chair subject to election. So this well may be my last or next to last commission meeting, but just because the municipal code says that we should have a chair and a vice chair, and there's no particular procedure for interim chair or interim vice chair, being the stickler for municipal code that you all know that I am, thought it would be appropriate to get just get an election down on the books for however long that may last, and it may not be much longer than the last election, i.e. a month or so.
Well, I can't leave Commissioner Freeman all out in the cold, so I will assume the secondary role temporarily.
Okay. So it sounds like we would have a slate, and maybe LP, we can just do that together. So the sort of move things along. So the slate, thank you very much, Commissioner Baker. So the slate would be, I would serve as interim chair, and Commissioner Baker would become the vice chair and potentially the chair if I am sort of told that the meter is run out. So that sounds like could probably get a motion for that, just to make a formal motion. When we want to make it, Commissioner?
So moved by me.
Okay, all right. And then Commissioner Baker, you want to make a second of that? Okay, all right. So that's the slate. Motion and second. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All right, and thank you now, Vice Chair Baker. And we have a slate for at least the next couple of months, and we'll see what happens with commissioner appointments then. Okay, that being done, back to you, LP, for old business.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate us. Now, we're not getting really good at this election thing. I feel like we should just do this every month just to like keep it fresh, like just for fun. Okay. So we have 4 items in the old business here, some of which probably will take longer to talk through than others. Biking/mobility study update, turf conversion update. So I know we have some interest from the public here as well on that. So I'll talk through kind of how it's been going. Implementation of SB 1383, just kind of where we're at and where we're going. And then I think more as a formal item, the acceptance of the resignation of Commissioner Evans. So I'm going to go in order, but we can jump around whenever people want. So biking/mobility study update, Commissioner Torrens. So now that we have all of our minutes approved, so we have staff capacity now to kind of go through and do some more reporting out on the conversations that have happened over the past year. I would be benefited, I think, probably from some time for either you and I or you and me and Anita to kind of touch base, just to make sure I understand kind of who does what on this, so I can set everybody up with the different supporting city pieces around like survey infrastructure, things like that. We're also going to be joined on a very part-time basis by some high school interns from Cathedral City High School, who are able particularly to help with public outreach work. So they'll be like hanging out with me at the farmer's market, but they would be really great, I think, assets. People love telling teens what they think about stuff. So I think some potentially helpful assets as we kind of try to do some of that surveying. But I think that's kind of, from my perspective, I think I want to just make sure we know our strategy, and then we can build tools based on kind of making sure we're all aligned on the strategy. But I will defer to you, Commissioner Torrens, though, if there's any further updates that you'd like to share on that.
No, that's great.
Okay, sweet, excellent. Back and done. Anybody have any questions on that or additional thoughts that have come up?
Oh, which weekend are we at Farmers Market again?
Yeah, it's the first Saturday of every month. I welcome, if anybody wants to come, let me know. We also have kind of a standing invitation for any Saturday, but since it's kind of just me, I can only really do one Saturday per month because it's a really early Saturday. But if anybody, you feel free obviously to stop by if you're there, or if anybody wants to, come talk about anything with residents on a particular Saturday, just let me know. But yes, I'm there first Saturday of every month, which next month is actually like the 6th. It's not New Year's weekend. It's the one after. It's like 2 weeks from now, roughly. Okay, so the moment we've all been waiting for. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
January 7th.
Yes.
January 7th.
Thank you. Yes, I was like, I'll remember when it gets closer. But yes, January 7th is the next day we'll be there. Normally we'd hand out bags. I'm also going to be bringing some SB 1383 related things to the next farmers market, which I'll talk about when we get to item 3. So turf conversion. So the program has been extremely popular, which we all knew it would be. They received 31 applications for single family home funding by 2 p.m. on the first day that applications were officially open. That does not include the people who applied kind of a little bit too early, because we opened applications on December 1st, kind of both to give people time to get their applications in order, and then also to give the DWA time to like get their business set up. And so just from, the funding was basically expended by roughly 5 p.m. on the first day for single family. It was extremely popular. They got more applications on the first day than they've gotten, I think, in the 3 previous months combined. So that was a pretty big testament, I think, to the effectiveness of that matching funding. The HOAs, as you heard from public comment, have been a little bit slower, but I think we are probably, as of this week, based on the rate at which applications are coming in, going to be fully subscribed. Because of that matching cap, we are seeing a lower number, though we are seeing a mix of projects that are larger than the cap, so they're coming in anyway and just getting the full match for that 1,600 square foot first portion, and then after that getting the regular DWA $3 match, or we're seeing HOAs come in with targeted small projects. So we're kind of seeing a mix of both. And then we also have, as you may remember from the council meeting, our targeted low income program, which is a relatively restrictive first attempt at a low income program here, which means you have to be part of DWA's bill assistance program and live in state designated disadvantaged communities, which is designated by a combination of income and environmental factors. So we don't have too many applications from that pool yet. So we're going to be doing a direct mailing to some people who've worked with various city programs like our home repair assistance grant. So we're going to be targeting some of those customers, but we also think that's something we want to revisit in the future program design around upfront costs, because especially if for low income customers, they may not be able to take on the upfront cost, even if they're basically getting a full rebate back, depending on what they choose to do. So looking at that for sort of the next version of the program. So there's kind of two things that, well, there's like one thing that we are doing and then one thing we've been asked to do that we will probably do. So we did get a request from DWA to see if we can get more funding allocated in the short term to try to take advantage of all of the interest that we've had, and basically the queue of applicants that we have in the pool of people who've continued to apply, even though we may not have funding to cover them. So suggestions internally have been that we go back to the city council in January and make a request for another $250,000. There is funding that the council allocated last year in the budget for climate and environmental programs in the general fund, which is outside of our existing budget. So I know when we first reviewed this proposal, we were looking at $150,000 we had found from basically unallocated funding within development services. There is additional funding that we learned about at the council meeting that can theoretically be applied to this. So our proposal is going to be that we take $250,000 from that and add it into this program so we can get more customers served, with probably a slightly different balance, because we are not planning to recommend at this point that we change the HOA cap in this version of the program for consistency's sake, because we don't want to get into a situation where somebody's like, oh, if I'd waited 2 weeks, I could have gotten this much more money. DWA is really reticent to go backwards because that kind of opens a whole can of worms. So we are hoping to address the cap and different methods of supporting low-income customers in sort of like a program 2.0 design that we would submit for fiscal year 2024, which is coming up. Like those budget requests are going to start being due in February and March. So that's something I would like to cover with the commission at the February meeting. It's just kind of like, okay, so we learned from the first thing, how are we going to do it again? So basically, long story short, trying to see if we can get a little bit more funding to help us extend what we're doing currently, kind of current state, just see if we can make it go a little farther. And then hoping to address some of the things that we've learned in this program in that next version, and hopefully going in for a larger fiscal ask so we can continue to take advantage of the momentum I think we have while we're still in the drought. So I'm sure there are questions. I will pause.
Commissioners, questions, comments? And thank you for the report, LP. Commissioner Vice Chair Baker, any questions, comments? Okay, Commissioner Barrett? Okay, I would just say obviously more money is better, and sooner is also better. So to the extent that, and I do recall the discussion at last year's last fiscal year's, probably earlier this year, but last fiscal year, or discussions for this current fiscal year, where council did allocate, I believe that was a request from then council member Coors to have that $1 million. There are other things that we could be doing with it, but this program is up and running. So this would be, and we clearly see that there is a large demand. And as I will discuss it, the water conservation, a big drought problem. So this is probably among the most effective ways that we can spend the money, and it will go out the door basically immediately. So we would have a direct impact. I believe the cap is appropriate for the simple reason, to address public comment. There is just a limited amount of money, at least for this fiscal year. So we just have to make sure that we get as many as possible. Even, you know, with $100,000, that was only 20 HOAs, and there's a lot of HOAs in the city. So that will keep that probably for the current fiscal year, and then look at with an additional funds to revisit it. But I think would agree that that's the best approach to take. Just drop more money into the currently designed program. So LP, do you need anything from us, or is that sufficient a direction to sort of move forward with council? I don't think this is sort of sense of the meeting. I don't believe you need a formal vote. I believe when we did vote last time that we clearly said any money that can be brought to the program is something the commission clearly supports. So I think you probably have what you need from our previous discussions. Say the commission is all in favor of additional money being made available for the program.
Yep, I think I'm good on that front. I realized I did not address one portion of Ms. Walker's public comment, which is how are we looking at people who had already participated in the program? So this is actually the question that I get the most from members of the public, is either, I did my conversion in October, I did my conversion last year, I was an early adopter. Is there any way to kind of reward me at this point? I think that is a challenging position to be in. I understand the frustration because, it's kind of a timing game. I think our stated goal when we adopted the new program was to incentivize new projects that would not have happened. And so I'm very open to ideas if there are any other ways that we can try to support projects that have already happened, if there's learnings we can gather from them. But I think extending the funding retroactively would kind of go against our stated intent of wanting to get these new projects off the ground, because we just have such a limited amount of funding. I mean, we can basically support like 20 to 30 projects. So that's kind of where we've been. I would say that resonates differently with different members of the public. I think some people kind of are like, yeah, okay, I get it. Others are not totally satisfied. But I think it's just kind of where we're at with this program a little bit, and hoping to be able to continue to support people if they want to make future energy efficiency changes or environmental impact changes. Hopefully they'll be able to take advantage of future programs that we have, even if they weren't able to benefit from this one.
Yes, I agree with the position LP is taking on this. I think that if we are to consider retroactive funding, that's a different topic that we would actually need to take back to council. My impression from our meeting with council was this is for new projects. And it's a broader question about how to reward people who are early starters, but it doesn't seem to be that it would be part of this turf conversion program.
I mean, that's traditional for programs, is that they go into effect and they go, it is what it is. And for example, I'll talk about heat pumps, and I may not be income eligible, but I got a heat pump in June, and then the Inflation Reduction Act passed in August. And so if I were being income eligible, I would have sort of lost out on that. So it's just the way programs tend to be designed, and council can potentially revisit that, but with a limited amount of funds, it's best just to sort of take this on a perspective as opposed to a retroactive basis. And I think that's where council is as well. So thank you for that comment, Commissioner Barrett.
I think our community member Prima has a comment. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I prefer,
yes.
Okay. I prefer just to leave that during the public comment. So
my bad.
Okay. Yeah.
then what I would just add is that I think the messaging is sort of, from my perspective, that with the course correction, it's not about equity, because I think some people are feeling like, oh, this is inequitable, but this is about incentivizing projects that weren't happening otherwise. And so that's why, like, I think it's just important to maintain that messaging, that we're not trying to not say that we aren't thrilled that many community members already saw the need to convert their turf, and that I realize it's it's hard to hear, but we really need to incentivize all community members. And if this is about diverting funds to make sure that they do that, that's really good.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Torrance. That is exactly, I think, the purpose is to encourage additional people to do it. We wish there were money to sort of do a look back, but once again, this is a very popular program. So I think it's an allocation. Okay, I think if there are no further comments on, at least for today, on turf conversion, but I think it's going to be a continued topic in future commissions, we can move to another fun topic, SB 1383.
Yes, another popular topic with members of the public. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you joining. We are kind of 3 months in, roughly, in terms of, kind of post residential organics going live. We're at roughly 20-25% participation rate, which is not that bad considering. It's definitely higher than New York City ever got. So we're counting our eggs in the basket, or whatever metaphor I'm looking for that I'm not getting. We are, however, going to be doing more outreach focused particularly on multifamily next year. We're going to be doing a lot more outreach in general, because I think the dust has now settled. The kind of general confusion people had about, like, why do I have a bin, has kind of settled out. And I think people are coming to us with more questions and more of an action orientation, as opposed to, I think, what we were hearing from a lot of people initially was a lot of frustration. So there's one tactical fix that we're going to be working on that I'll bring back to this commission when we're ready to actually do it, which is changing the zoning codes and planning related documents around size required for receptacles. Because right now our codes are sized for 2 receptacles, and now everybody has 3. So this is something we've actually gotten some questions about, like, is code enforcement going to be going out and giving people a ticket because they can't fit this new bin in their enclosure that was designed for 2 bins? So we are looking at that particular tactical issue, just to make sure that we're not penalizing people for adopting something that we want them to adopt just because they don't have the physical space. We are also looking at different sizes of containers, because I think a lot of people are really struggling with the large container. I know even my 9-unit complex, we have one of the 60-gallon ones, and we're never going to fill that thing. And that's for 9 different units kind of working into one bin. We've been working a lot with different neighborhoods, condos, HOAs, people who live close together around sharing bins. So that's actually been pretty productive. Usually people people seem to be working out good ways to centrally locate a bin, or have one neighbor who's kind of responsible for sponsoring the bin, and everybody's kind of using that one if they don't want to each individually have one. That seems to be working okay for some people, but not for everyone. But really, I think we just are going to be going back out to do more outreach and education around kind of the why, where this is going, the bags question, which I think is still pretty confusing for most people. But now that compostable plastic bags are more available, we are being more explicit in our messaging about our preference for compostable plastic bags as opposed to non-compostable plastic. Because the main reason that we have the bags is to keep the bins clean. So people aren't kind of just throwing food waste in there, and then we get a lot of issues with pest incursions or smells or other concerns that residents may have. So we're asking for bags just to kind of help, keep some of those issues down. The secondary reason why we were asking people to bag things, the secondary reason is to separate yard and food waste, because they're processed totally differently, because yard waste is dry, food waste is wet, not like 100% of the time, but as a general rule. So they're processed differently at the compost facility, just because of the moisture content. So being able to separate those out is pretty important. We also ask for the bags because it makes it easier for us to do our state mandated audits. So those have already started. Lid flips basically are happening. People are looking in to kind of see, are there tires in the compost bin, like that kind of stuff. They're educational audits for the first year. fines don't even come into the possible picture until like October of 2024. So we have a lot of time for people to kind of learn their way around this in the residential space in particular. And so the clear plastic bags we've kind of started to back away from, just because we were having, it's kind of like a hard intellectual case to make, right? Like it's not, you get a lot of the like, but that's not compostable, you're just making more trash. So we are encouraging people to use compostable bags wherever possible. If those aren't available, then reuse a plastic bag you already have, like a produce bag or some other, you know, plastic thingy that you would have thrown away anyway. With clear plastic bags is kind of like still good, but less good than something compostable. So we're going to be working on being really clear with that messaging starting next year. I know this commission has been really helpful to us in terms of figuring out where to put some of that effort. I know we've been not quite as on it as I think I would have liked to have been for a variety of different reasons, many of which this commission is familiar with, but really hoping to hit that now that people are more familiar with the program and the infrastructure next year. Hopefully we'll have a slightly warmer landing spot for some of that outreach. So that's kind of where we're at on that part of SB 1383. Also next year, I'm going to be thinking about mulch a lot, but that's a next year me problem, not a today me problem.
Okay, Commissioner Barrett.
Jake had his hand up before me.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Or there, yeah. Moved over. Okay, moved corners there. Thank you.
So what's funny is that I attend the Scour meetings or have been part of the communication. And what is interesting is that I kept waiting for a new bin to be showing up at my house because of the fact that they kept talking about one of the reasons why the delay was because of these bins. And I think where we've missed the mark, and I don't even remember this coming up, and if it had in any of our Scour meetings, was that if you already subscribed to a yard waste bin, you weren't getting a new bin. And I think that, so to me, like when I was doing outreach with people in the community in Tuckowitz River Estates, where I live, everyone's like, no, I haven't got my new bin. This is, you know, so as part of the like extended outreach and communication, like underscoring that if you were already someone, because that's the whole reason why we're doing the bag thing. And maybe the reason I got confused was that I felt like there were times where we were going to push forward in advance of the October deadline because we had yard waste bins. And then that was why we started talking about the packaging and using the plastic bags. So maybe I just sort of suffered from being part of the dialogue for far too long, and I wasn't keeping up with all the twists and turns and didn't get the overall, like, you know, fact sheet at the end. So that's just a message to us to kind of bring those along, that if they already had a yard waste bin, they're not getting a new bin, that they can start using this bin, because I was surprised. So
yep. No, I appreciate that. You're definitely not the only person who has had that question. So yeah, that's something we'll make sure to continue to underline. It's like, you know, this bin is where the green, you know, the plant-based things and other foodie type of things, the nature stuff goes into this bin.
Right.
Yeah, that's important to underline. Thank you for that.
And I think our partners at Palm Springs Waste Disposal could also be a partner, because their website says nothing about it. If you were to go to their website, it all talks about this new green bin. And so it wasn't until I called them to learn that they're like, actually, they're like, what kind of bin do you currently have? And I said, I have a brown bin. And they're like, well, then you're already subscribed. And I'm like, but you don't say anything on your website about this. So not just from our point of view of being ambassadors for the program and celebrating what it's doing for the community, we also have a disposal service that doesn't also have complementary communication.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I appreciate you flagging that. There's like and this is where I think maybe you were along for the ride for a long time. You may also know that the state, as part of SB 1383, is requiring standardization of bin colors for different things. So I'm actually going to have to go back and check just to make sure there's not some sort of future swap that needs to come to make sure we're compliant with bin color standardization. I haven't memorized that section yet, so couldn't tell you which color is the right one, but that, I wonder if that has something to do with some of the confusion / hesitation, because they're all supposed to be one color.
Right. Well, and I thought that at some point, like even in the earlier iteration, the bins were going to be orange, maybe if I did. They weren't even going to be green. And so they're like, so, and I thought that was odd.
Yeah.
Because like, well, we already have a black and we have a brown. And it's like, why not green? They're like, we chose orange. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. I could be making that up, but like,
No, I believe it.
It's been a wild ride. So
Definitely.
yes, I'm delighted to hear that ultimately the focus would be on a green bin. But anyway, thanks for letting me make my comment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. And we'll make sure to be consistent with that in our messaging, because I get that question a fair amount from, or like once I start working backwards from people being like, I didn't get a bin, I would say 40% of the time they just just didn't get a bin. And then the other 60% of the time they already had a bin and didn't realize that was the right bin.
Mr. Barrett, yeah.
My comment is actually a continuation of Jake's in a different direction. But I will say just for Jake, because I live in a multifamily and don't have my own bin, I was losing track of all those discussions of bin colors and what bins you were getting and everything else. So it was a hard conversation to follow. Mine is these are things we could be doing in Scour, but here's fine for it also. Mine is I'm not separating because I don't know anything about it. And what I think that might be interesting, I would actually like to just start separating, and I need to do that. I need to get the compostable bags and just start doing it, but I need someplace to drop it off. And I'm wondering if we could maybe, I mean, there may be others out there who live in spaces where the management of your park or the management of your HOA is not cooperating very well, or it's awkward. So if people want to do it, if there is a way to do it, if they want to do it. I mean, I was encouraged what I think it was you, LP, was saying that some HOAs are working with other HOAs to make it easier. So the same sort of thing. If there is some way for those of us who want to do it and our residential management isn't helping, if there was a way for us to just do it.
Yeah, totally. It's a great question. I will answer it in two ways. One of which is there really should be a bin at your complex at this point, because we got ours pretty late at my house. But I know I'm just saying there should be. I know that means there, it doesn't mean there is, but everywhere. So when we received our bin, we didn't get any of the pamphlets or any notification, and we got the bin like October or like November 20th or some random day. And so I told my neighbors about it, but like my management company did not tell us anything. Like that's not going to be happening from my particular property management company, which is fine. But so that's also part of the reason why I want to make sure we're doing good focus on multifamily, because I think a lot of people just aren't getting any information, but also I think to people who already had the yard waste bins, because theoretically the way we were conveying information was with pamphlets that arrived with the new bin. But if you were not a recipient of a new bin, whether you don't have your own bin or you already had a bin, you didn't get that information. So those two buckets of people are among the buckets I want to make sure we're talking to. With regards to how can people participate if they don't have easy access to it or their company's not supporting it. So actually through the city's grants and sponsorships program, as part of through the city council funds and through the discretionary funding and stuff, Desert Compost, which is the community composting organization, did receive some funding this year. So they're, I don't want to spill the beans on any plans that they have, because I know Ms. Walker is a member of Desert Compost as well, so I will not spill the beans. But they also will be, I think, joining us at the farmers market on occasion. So people can bring compost to the farmers market, which I know they used to be able to do. So that will be an option. But I think kind of like bin sharing, I'm a big fan of a bin share. So if there are even ways that we could, like, this is the kind of thing that I would love for there to be a map of, like, somebody could put their bin on the map and say, like, you can drop your compost in my bin if you want. Like, I know that requires time that we don't really have, but would love to do. So I'll continue to think on this, but also I'm open to any ideas that any other commission members have.
I'll just put one clarification, by the way, is even if my park was actually cooperating, we have a problem with people coming in and using our disposal areas. And they pay no attention to recycling versus garbage versus whatever. So if you want to do it so that it's separated and can be separated, it's no good to do it in my park. And I assume that happens in other places.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with most like centralized disposal areas that are not kind of locked or hidden away.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a pandemic in just our world. People don't know how to manage waste properly. Sadly.
They don't know how to manage themselves properly, but
But I think that there is an overall paralysis that happens when it comes to what do I do with this? And so I think we have a long way to go. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Commissioner Barrett.
Vice Chair Baker, any questions or comments?
No, none right now.
Okay, and I have a question, LP, for outreach. So should we be putting yard waste? I'll give you a very practical example. I grow asparagus, which this time of the year it's basically a tropical forest, and the fronds turn brown. So that's when I cut them. And that is probably enough to fill my very large bin because I've got a huge asparagus. So is it okay just to drop that into the bin, or should I get a large compostable? I guess this question is, should I be separating out what is obviously sort of yard waste from what I do use? Is I have these neat little compost bin that I have on my sink top. So I use that for just my food waste. So is that okay to have just yard waste sort of in the bin and my food waste in a bag? Is that acceptable?
Yes, this is my favorite genre of stumper questions, which is what do I do with something that might be yard or food waste equivalently? I love these questions. The answer from PSDS is counted as yard waste because you don't have to bag it. So yes, you can just dump it in the bin. You don't need to put it in a bag. I think there's definitely going to be some areas where it's kind of like marginal, but yeah, that's totally fine. You don't need to find like the world's largest compostable bag for your yard asparagus.
Yeah, because it's going to be a lot of asparagus fronds, whatever. Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that clarification because that's on my to-do list in the next week or so, is to cut down my asparagus forest.
Nice. Yeah, we got that question about key limes a lot when the program rolled out. People were wondering whether excess limes from their tree counted as food or yard waste. And the first time I got the question, I short-circuited. But now
and the answer, I already picked my key limes, but I'm in lemon season now. So the lemons, they actually, should I put the lemon rinds in a bag, or they're kind of messy? So yeah.
Yeah, I would say if it's like individual rinds, put them in a bag. But if you've got like 80 lemons that are just like, they were unripe or something like that, those can go in unbagged.
Okay, fine. I'll put the rinds in, and that's what I've been doing. I have 500 lemons to juice over the next week.
Oh, I'm amazed.
My lemon trees went insane. Okay. Thank you for that. But that's the kind of question, sort of FAQ. It might be helpful actually to take these questions and put an FAQ both on our website and also the PSDS website, because there you've just got, Commissioner Torrens, you had a great FAQ, I had one, so maybe that's a good thing to sort of start as an FAQ and coordinate with PSDS of joint posting.
Yeah, absolutely. We are doing a quick website refresh, or starting to do a quick website refresh, just to make sure everything's current. We have a lot of information on our website, which I think is amazing. We have so much information that it's not always super easy to navigate. So as part of that, we'll start adding more of the FAQs to the recycling section.
Great, thank you. All right, I think this is another one of continuing topics, but if there aren't any further questions, we can finish up on that one for this evening. Okay, back to you, LP, remaining old business.
Sure. So the final item we have here is the acceptance of the resignation from Commissioner Evans, which he did email out to everyone. So everyone has a copy of that. I think we just want to reflect in the minutes gratitude for Commissioner Evans' work, or when he was vice chair and for briefly chair, I suppose, and gratitude for his work on the commission, and just wanted to acknowledge that his final meeting was last November, and then that he has now moved to a different municipality. But if there's any other either formalities or anything else anyone would like reflected in the minutes, feel free to let us know.
Other than to thank him for his service. Thank you. Anything else on that? Okay. All right, new business, AB 2944, and as Commissioner Barrett knows, I love the Brown Act, so you'll hear more about it.
Sure. So I can kick us off. So AB 2944 is basically relating to the fact that this meeting is remote. So that's kind of what this is. This is kind of a continuation of the conversation we started last meeting as to whether and when we wanted to resume in-person meetings with the commission. I know we kind of like notionally talked about it last week. Just a couple of small updates. So one, we did, this wasn't super clear to me, so just sharing in case it wasn't as clear to you all. At some point, the COVID emergency order may or will expire, and we will no longer have one of those. At that point, the commission will have to go back to in-person because we will no longer have the remote option under the Brown Act. However, under the new version of the Brown Act, or like the update to the Brown Act, which kicks in at the beginning of next year, there are limited exceptions for certain members to be remote at certain times for particular like reasons, like illness or various, and I'll get like a little list of those from the clerk's office. I just learned about this like 2 hours ago. So I'm still kind of figuring out the details. So Chair Friedman may have a little bit more details than I do on that. So, if there's an emergency, we can still avail ourselves of this option, but eventually we will have to go back to full in person. However, the emergency order is still in place. So the decision is up to the commission as to whether you would like to go back to an in-person format or whether you'd prefer to remain remote until that emergency order expires. We are kind of hearing from other commissions that many of them, even those who were particularly eager to go back to in-person, like when this decision was first floated in the early fall, are slightly more reticent now because of, annual spikes in flu, COVID, RSV, all the different viruses. Though we do have a few commissions who are going to try out in person, but I would say 70% of them are staying remote for now, with 30% going to in-person. We will, in January, have more advanced remote meeting equipment. So we'll be able to run these meetings, even if they are Zoom or hybrid meetings, from our large conference room with some pretty sophisticated cameras and microphones and things like that. So that'll help us continue to record them, even if we go into a hybrid world. But that's kind of all I have. I think the decision is primarily the commission's, how you want to handle the next couple of months and what you want to do kind of pending any emergency order expiration. But if anybody has any further questions or anything to add, feel free.
Yeah, thank you, LP. The current schedule, but it may change, but the current schedule is the governor's executive order expires on February 28th, 2023. And at that point, assuming that there's no other executive order or other state or local guidance, such as from OSHA, Cal OSHA, or the Riverside County Department of Public Health, the opportunity, the ability more accurately to be remote would expire. My recommendation, particularly since we're likely to cancel the January meeting, is that since February is allowed to continue under the current system, that the commissioners, meet remotely then. I may or may not be here, and then sort of revisit the issue at the February meeting. And it may be that there's nothing to revisit because the requirement will be legal requirement to meet in person. And certainly if they're new commissioners, I'm sure they would enjoy having a chance to actually meet to meet in person. But that would be my suggestion. Is that I may not be here in the February, but my suggestion is to continue the current regime through February because we're allowed to, and then revisit the issue at the February meeting, either because new commissioners or the rules change. So, Vice Chair Baker.
Is that nothing right now?
Okay, fine. Wasn't sure whether you wanted to speak on that.
Yep.
Okay. Any further thoughts? Is that sort of a consensus? Is let's continue. Once again, my recommendation, but I may not be here. Let's plan for the next meetings. January likely to be canceled, February being remote, and then this issue goes back on the February meeting agenda because there'll be more information about the timing of the executive order. I think at that point it'll be known whether it's going to be extended or other guidance would permit continued remote meetings.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you much. Okay. Now is for our subcommittee and commissioner reports. And we'll start with standing subcommittee on waste reduction. Commissioner Barrett, Commissioner Torrens, if there's anything else beyond the 1383 discussion that you want to bring up.
I was going to just report, somehow my camera's getting fuzzy. I was going to report that Scour did some reconsideration of how we do the electronic waste and shredding event. And this was just an update for what we did. And then we talked about 1383. And I expect that we will be doing that again in the future. We're not meeting in December because I was out of town when we would have met. Our meeting is, I have it somewhere, but it's in the first week of January. I think that Scour, we should probably go ahead and meet in January.
That's fine. As long as it's just the two of you, that's not the majority. So the two of you can meet and it's not the majority of the commission. So.
Right. Yeah. And you know, we're in the midst of dealing with compostables. So it seems to make sense,
yeah,
particularly to take to that meeting some of what we did today, some of what we talked about today.
And particularly since we may not have a full commission meeting. So it allows the two of you to work with LP and Anita to move forward some of these issues and then bring them back to the commission as needed at the following meeting.
Right. Yeah. Jake, did you have any comments on Scour? Okay.
Yeah, I just, Mr. Barrett, what you mentioned just reminded me to share that we're going to do another e-waste and shredding event in the last week of January. So we'll either be the 28th or 29th of January. I have to do a coin toss to decide which day. Apparently there's a lot of stuff happening on the 28th, so I want people to be able to attend. But either the 28th or 29th will be next e-waste and shredding if anybody has any things to dispose.
Okay. All right, that's it for Scour.
Okay, thank you. All right, next ad hoc committee, subcommittee on strategic planning and general plan update. That's me. We're still waiting for the housing element to go before council. And I understand from reading from other cities that there's a hard deadline of January 31st from the State Housing Community and Development Department. So presumably that will come to council at the beginning of January. I don't have any further updates. LP, you might want to just sort of in your report back, just if you have a chance to talk with Flynn or David Newell in planning, just to let folks know, particularly if we won't be meeting in January, sort of whether that's something that's expected to go to council next month. Then that would be it. And I think that's probably the biggest remaining issue on the general plan update, because all of the cities are required to have certified housing elements by the end of next month, from what I understand from the state deadline. Okay, solar and green buildings. So if you've read the front page of today's Desert Sun or otherwise been reading the news, the CPUC in its infinite wisdom decided unanimously to substantially cut the solar, what we call the net energy metering benefits. I am working through the I read the markup yesterday. The clean decision may only be 250 pages as opposed to 274 in the markup. I don't recommend you read it unless you need to get help getting to sleep. The rules will change effective probably April 15th or so. And folks who sign on to solar after that will lose a lot of the benefits. Now, there's a question of how much the sky is falling or not. But there are likely to be substantial reductions in solar adoption. This is not something that really the city or even DC, and I'll get to that a little bit later, can do much about. Both CVAG and Desert Community Energy issued support letters to keep the current regime and support for continued development. That did not go anywhere. So this is a formal decision from the CPUC, and we're all going to be, working through the consequences and see, what we can do to encourage notwithstanding that. So we'll be dealing with DC. I'll talk about that later, but it is regrettably a decision, particularly for communities such as ours, with about more solar than anywhere else in the state, let alone the country. It is not helpful for what clearly had been a substantial benefit to Palm Springs. So we'll see. I'll continue to monitor that proceeding. and report back. But on the other hand, on the same day, there are three major commissions dealing with energy and sustainability issues at the state level. That's the CPUC. The California Air Resources Board adopted the scoping plan. That's next on my reading list. It's also very complicated. That essentially, if not necessarily mandates, strongly orients the state toward various issues of carbon neutrality. LP, I'll be working with you. One of the issues is transportation electrification and fleet replacement. So that is likely to be happening there. And then simultaneously, also, I think the day before, on the 14th, on Wednesday, the Energy Commission, the third sort of part of the three-leg state stool, adopted its clean transportation sort of budget for the next couple of years. And that's roughly $3 billion of various funding for transportation electrification and other programs. So two agencies taking sort of pro-sustainability, one agency 2 steps ahead, 1 step back from the state last week. I'll be monitoring all of these proceedings, but it's just very, very complicated is about the best that I can see. And trying to get all of these issues dealing with, at the city level, that's where it gets completely complicated, of trying to figure out, agency X says do this, agency Y says do that, and not necessarily in sync. So is a challenge, LP, whether I'm on the commission or not. You can always count on me to help you work through some of these issues. As I said, we'll be dealing with some of them at DCE, and some of them are, I read these decisions because I like reading regulatory decisions. So I'm happy to help on that. So that's sort of the main, sort of, news from Sacramento, and in the CPUC's case, they're based in San Francisco, right next to the Opera House. So I can't go to the Opera House without getting the reminder of my work duties. Any comments on that sort of issues? And there is, if you get a chance, there's a substantial articles. I would probably recommend, if you want further interesting, Sammy Roth, ex of the Desert Sun and with the LA Times, had a very good explainer Thursday afternoon, right after the CPUC has issued its decision. So you have the Desert Sun article today, and you can look up the LA Times for a really good explainer on that. And sort of a shameless plug for Sammy, because he's really, really very good at working through some of these issues. He has something that he started actually at the Desert Sun and then continued over to the LA Times called the Boiling Point newsletter. I believe it comes out every Thursday, and it is a really, really good aggregation of everything you need to know about climate change and sustainability. So I think you can just subscribe to that without any, paying a sort of log-on fee for the LA Times. So that's it for solar and green building. Commissioner Torrens, anything further on? Thank you, LP, on that. You can subscribe through the LA Times newsletter page, and it's for free. Yep, shameless plug, but he's a really good guy. Commissioner Torrens, anything more on bicycle routes and cycling?
Nothing new to add.
Okay, water conservation, and sort of looping back for the discussion about drought, because we're meeting on Monday evening. Tomorrow is the DWA board meeting. The big issue, it is on the agenda, but also you probably have seen that in the newspaper, the drought emergency. The Colorado River is running out of water. There's nothing behind the dams. The State Water Project, while it's been snowing up north, it'll get cold, and then apparently the weather forecasts are, it's going to dry up again. So those storms up north are, not necessarily going to continue. So if the drought emergency remains, it's getting worse, as it'll be discussed tomorrow at the DWA board meeting. Each of the 6 agencies in the Coachella Valley work together, so there is a drought management sort of response plan, and they very well may move to further, may need to move to further measures. So that will be discussed tomorrow, and then it'll be a DWA decision in coordination with the other agencies there. So in the meantime, the agent, DWA is, strongly encouraging conservation. They're up to roughly, I believe, close to 12% based on the governor's executive order was to reduce water conservation by 15% compared with 2020. That's a bit of a challenge because Palm Springs was closed in a lot of 2020 because of COVID, but nevertheless, the reduction is, I believe, close to 12% from the 2020 voluntary baseline and about 18% from the previous 2013 baseline. So water conservation remains, but LP, that's also once again part of the turf reimbursement, and obviously the city is probably DWA's largest single customer. So anything that the city can do, and that may be potentially another use of the $1 million in funds of funding some of the city's own water protection at the airport and the parks. So that's it. And also there'll be there are new DWA directors, and they'll be installed at tomorrow's meeting. So I'll report back to the extent that I'm around, but probably continue to at least for a little while attend those meetings. So that's it for water conservation.
The Parks Commission is actually looking at a turf conversion plan tonight. They are conflicting with us because of our one-off Monday. So we're following that closely and supporting them on that. But yes, I agreed that could be a great potential use of that additional funding.
That if you could report back to us on saying what's happened there, that would be great. Okay, wellness. Vice Chair Baker, anything on wellness, and particularly the smoking ordinance, which non-smoking ordinance go to a new city council?
Yeah, so since the new council is coming on board now, I guess we'll revisit that in January and see if we can get some traction finally.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, keep us posted there. Back to me, Desert Community Energy and Inland Regional Energy Network. There's just a lot going on. We will have, speaking of new council, so now council member with council member Coors rotating off the council. Council member Middleton has been the alternate to DCE, so she will become the Palm Springs representative. And at the next DC board meeting, there'll be the election of the board members. We're not sure whether Mayor Kelly of Palm Desert, who's been their alternate, whether she'll be serving as the representative for Palm Desert, or whether Palm Desert Council will name other folks. That's up to them. But I'm already in discussion with Council Member Middleton just to update her on some of those things. Really, the biggest issue is just compliance issues. I'll be looking, and this is also somewhat relevant for solar and green building. There are a large number of various rebate programs under the Inflation Reduction Act that become live starting next month. So LP, I'll be following that, and the extent that I can find a really sort of useful link that I can send you, or just some collateral material. We'll probably cross-post that between the DCE website and the city website. Anita, particularly thank you for updating the city website, and we'll continue to do that. We are updating our website on various issues, and that'll probably go live at the beginning of the year. But this is additional matter that we're dealing with. The Inland Regional Energy Network, the executive committee created by IREN, met for the first time this past Tuesday. That consists of representatives from CBAG. Mayor Ortiz of Indio is the CBAG representative on the executive committee. There are 3 representatives from WRCOG, Western Riverside Council of Governments, and San Bernardino Associated Governments. It was just an initial sort of get acquainted meeting, and we'll be discussing, the IREN Executive Committee will be discussing the strategic plan. We probably won't get to naming the consultants, the agreements, until February or so. But LP, once again, what I can do in the interim, and particularly working with you on a codes and standards presentation for our cannabis stakeholders, that's probably something that I would like to do. Once again, we'll talk to you, and Veronica, who's now having a little bit of free time now that the ordinance, the vacation rental ordinance has passed. So hopefully we can get that started. The energy code and the other building codes go into effect on the 1st of the year. And I provided a public comment to the council when they approved it on first reading a couple of weeks ago to let them know about the new standards that enter in effect on state law. And Vice Chair Baker and Commissioner Barrett, yes, we will be bringing back the Community Advisory Committee. The program assistant that had been tasked with that moved on, so we're in the recruiting now for a new program assistant to help us get back together. So stay tuned, but we have not forgotten you. To the extent that DC is able to put some reserves on the books next year, then we'd like to be looking at launching community programs starting in probably 2024, and obviously we want the input from the Community Advisory Committee on that. So stay tuned, but we'll keep you posted and get that restarted. So that's it for DC and IREN, and you can always ping me if any questions, LP, on that. World Environment Day, that had been Commissioner Futterman, and I would probably ask LP that you can find a new commissioner who would be interested in keeping that. It's been a wonderful activity, particularly for getting our younger, our students involved. So that would be really good to sort of continue. And I'm sure Mayor Garner would, she'd have a lot of really good ideas on that. And perhaps that could be linked to her Mayor's Book Club that she mentioned at the council meeting as part of her installation, and maybe in coordination with World Environment Day, and maybe for Arbor Day as well, find some sustainability books that would get our younger people in our community interested and committed on that topic. Okay, so that's the end of subcommittee and commissioner reports, commissioner comments, and upcoming agenda. Vice Chair Baker, any further comments?
I'd like to echo your remarks to Commissioner Torrens and thank him for his service and wish him well in his new adventure.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Barrett.
I have a comment. I'm not sure that we have any role in it, but I think that somehow or other the conversion of the Mesquite Golf Course to the Prescott Preserve is something that should somewhere fall into some of our agenda. Since it's a private entity, it's a little hard to do that. But it's in my neighborhood, and so I'm over there. I'm biking through it very often. It's actually got a lot of people. There's a lot of people using it, which is an encouraging thing in terms of people just using that as one way to get out and organize and whatever else. So it's just something I don't know what I would say to do with it, but it seems to me it's a point of interest.
That could potentially be an agenda item, but I would check with the city clerk and the city attorney, given the litigation, if there are any sensitivities. But LP, you might consider that as a presentation from at a future commission meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Barrett. Commissioner Torrens.
I wanted to confirm, I think Commissioner Baker had thanked me for my service, but I think he meant Commissioner Evans, unless I missed something.
Yeah.
I was like, not again.
All right, thank you. No, and nothing else to add, and no agenda items.
Okay, thank you. And I have nothing further other than if I don't see you in February, it's been a wonderful 7.5 years. That's all I can say. And you'll hear from LP then. So adjournment, I would say let's adjourn to the next scheduled meeting because it has not been formally canceled. But LP, if you can touch base with the city clerk's office And assuming there are no issues, you can get back to us fairly quickly, just people can free up that on the agenda. But if you don't see any issues that will require our input to council or any other issues, then if you could get out perhaps no later than the beginning of the year, if not before, a formal notice of cancellation to alert the public, particularly our usual public speakers, that we will not be meeting in January. So if there are no further items, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting to be held on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, subject to a cancellation notice to be issued by staff. Should that be the determination?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for a very, very effective meeting. Wish you all a very good holiday season. And thank you, LP and Anita, for all of your hard work. And thank you, Ms. Walker, for joining us and sticking through the entire meeting. And thank you. I think we're adjourned, and see you all maybe next time.
Happy holidays.
Thank you all
Too.
so much.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.